What does it take to make a relationship last? I mean, really last. I mean, you've seen those people who've been married 50, 60, 70, 75 years. I just saw that on Today's Show yesterday morning where there was a couple, they were celebrating a 75th anniversary. Can you imagine? What does it take to make it last like that? I know what it is. And you may think you know what it is too. And you might disagree with what I'm about to say. I'll bet you most people would say that it's love, right? They loved each other so much. They had this undying, devoted, loyal, just unbreakable love that couldn't be sated by anything, right? Wrong. You know, Beatles released a song years and years ago, back in the 60s, I guess, called All You Need Is Love. I don't know when it was put out, to be honest with you, but just the mere mention of the song probably has it stuck in your head the rest of the day. And it's had so many people believing that you can just, if you just had enough love, if you just had the right demonstration of love all your life, then it's going to go right, it's going to last. Well, that's not the truth. It's not the truth. We've seen people with just beautiful weddings and wild honeymoons get divorced. We've seen people who've claimed that they've had chemistry like no other, and before you know it, they found somebody else. We've seen people who just were matched so well that you couldn't imagine them with anybody else, and before you know it, they're divorced, and their kids are suffering, and things are not going so swell in paradise, and so that's not what it is. And you can't say these people didn't love each other, because they did at least at one point or another. But I don't think love is the glue that holds things together. I think love is necessary. It's an essential component in all of it. But there's something greater. There's something greater. And if you're listening to this, listen more closely right now. The thing that is greater than love is values. And not just values, but aligned values. You see, everything comes down to whether your values are aligned with another person or not. And it's something that's very rarely ever talked about. We talk about how you can love anybody you want, or you should love people unconditionally. And you should, I mean, it's just crazy how people talk about love. But values is very rarely ever discussed. And it's almost as if you discuss it that you have devalued love. And isn't that crazy? You really need to know who you're with before you commit to them. And it's quite important to know, because everybody has values. Some people have weak values. Some people have very strong values. And some values are just different. They're neither weak nor strong. They're just different across the board. But people don't want to talk about it, and people don't want to give it any credit until it's too late. And then they can put their finger on it when they look back. But they still don't call it values. And that's why they go into another relationship and repeat the same problem and end up in divorce again. Here's the thing. You know, back in 1983, Journey released a song that was a big hit called Separate Ways. It's still played on the radio all the time. And in that song, there's a line that says, "True love will not desert you." I'm not going to dispute that. I don't want to talk about whether true love would actually desert you or not. But the song seems to emphasize that if they ever wanted to make it again, that the love would conquer all. And love doesn't conquer all. It's, like I say, it's very important, but you need to be able to align your values with another person. And that's the biggest reason relationships don't work. I can guarantee it. I do not apologize for that. I think you need to figure that out. And you say, well, how do you figure it out? Do a lot of talking. You know, years ago, there was if you can still buy it, there's a book called The Big Book of Questions. And they're just open-ended questions. You know, there's no right or wrong answers to them. It's written by a psychologist. It just has like hundreds of questions, just like hypothetical questions, like, what if blah, blah, blah happened? What would you do? Blah, blah, blah. And it's really good stuff. And I think asking questions of the person that you're interested in is a really good thing, because you need to get past the infatuation that you have with somebody to find out what you're really dealing with. See, people don't want to take a chance on having to forsake something that potentially wouldn't be good for them while their supply is being met in the immediate. And that's a very tough one. Everybody's prone to it, including me. Everybody. Jeez, I can't think of one person who hasn't succumbed to it at some point or another. But you need to figure out who you're with. You need to find out if your values align. There's all sorts of kind of values. There's spiritual values. If you don't think spiritual values matter, you wait until you have kids. I know people who get married and they come from two different faiths, whatever that might be. I mean, two different faiths, and all they know is they love each other. And that over here, that what you believe over here shouldn't really matter because you love each other. Let me tell you something. Love waxes and wanes. There's an ebb and flow. People who've been married for 50 years or more, and I can't remember the survey. You can find them online real easy. But these tests have been done. Not tests, but these interviews have been done with people who have been married that long or older, and they will tell you that there were times they loved their spouse, and then there were times they didn't love their spouse at all, but they made it. And so that really blows the whole theory of you have to have love to make it work, to make it last. There's a lot of people walking around me. It's very distracting. But you don't really. I mean, you have to have love, don't get me wrong. But love is not going to be the glue. It certainly wasn't for them. And yes, you do love a person more on down the road than you did in your earlier days, perhaps. But you don't always love the person that you're with. You just don't. We are too conditional. That's part of the human condition. We're very conditional. And we don't always feel the same. But if you don't think your spiritual values matter, if they're not aligned with the other person, you wait till you have kids. Because children have a way of asking questions that will make you stop and take love out of the equation. Because the kids just want their answers. They just want answers to their questions. And if you have a differing opinion than your spouse, that's when the battle will ensue. Or if you just decide one day you want to pick up and really start practicing what you believe, your spouse may have a problem with it. I've seen it so many times. So I'm not just talking, I'm not talking out of my butt here. If you think that your political values don't matter, if you don't think they need to be aligned, you just wait until the next election. Oh my, you wait till you get with the person that you love in a mixed crowd. Start talking. It will suddenly matter. If your values about relationships aren't aligned, it will not last. It will not last. If you have a person who says, well, I'll love you if you give me what I want, if everything's right, but if I fall out of love with you, I won't stick with you just for the kids. Do not marry that person. Do not do it. Now you say, well, I don't think you should stay together just for the kids. Forget about that. If you have somebody who's saying that before you even tie the knot, you've got a problem. Because you're not always going to be in love with each other. You're not always going to be in love. I can't say it enough. There's spiritual values, there's political values, there's relationship values. There's values about money. If you cannot agree on money, if you cannot align on money, then you've got a problem. People think that all that matters is that your personalities have to kind of be cohesive, or some people say opposites attract, and so we complement each other. All that stuff really does not come into play later on. That's not what matters. What matters is values. If you can align your values, then what happens is, over time, a greater friendship forms out of your marriage, out of your relationship, a greater friendship. And if you don't have friendship tacked down, the love won't be there later on. That's just, you know, I hate saying this because I don't like saying this at all. I don't ever hardly ever say it, but I'm going to say it here. I'm just telling you like it is. I've had years of experience with this, and I've seen people throughout my whole life doing this, and they've paid the consequence for not aligning their values. Let me tell you something. People say, well, yeah, but Greg, look, all that matters is, they'll say things like, there's givers and there's takers. And givers should be givers and takers should be takers. That still comes down to values. Still comes down to values. All you need to figure out is how to align your values, and you can make a relationship last. Forget about whether obviously you're going to be attracted to someone with a great personality, a personality that's cohesive with yours, but don't think that's going to be what all that matters in the end. Obviously, you're going to be attracted to someone who's physically attractive, but that's not going to last either. You're going to be attracted to someone who's meeting some kind of psychological or emotional need of yours, but that's not going to last forever either. Anything could happen, and that might get taken away. That aspect might get taken out of your relationship. What do you do? And you say, well, Greg, I thought I aligned my values with somebody, with my spouse. It could be a man or a woman. I thought I can't hardly talk. My tongue is dry. I thought I aligned my values with them, and I was fooled. They still cheated on me. They still left me. And what do I do about that? Well, either you were wrong about the person that you aligned yourself with, or that person, if what they reported their values to be is really true, the difference between them and a person with no values is someone who has a different attitude about it, a different approach to it. You say, well, Greg, what if these people, they just don't live up to their values? They don't. There are people who lie about them, and then there's this other aspect of the human condition where we do things that there's what we believe, and then there's what we do. There's what we believe, and there's what we do, and it's not always easy to do what you believe. I mean, but here's the thing. If you really hold true to your values, you will respond to the infractions in a much different way than someone who's just lying about their values. That's all. That's it. That's it right there in a nutshell. If they're really true to their values, doesn't mean they won't commit an infraction, but their attitude about it will be different. But a person who has lied about their values won't care. If you're with someone who says, I know what I did was wrong, but and they lied to you. I guess you can choose to get out of the relationship or just deal with it. But if you're going through divorce or you're going through separation and you're pining away and you're trying to figure out what happened and you need some answers. And I know what this is to do this. Okay, so I'm not just making things up as I go along. But when you stand in front of a mirror and you ask yourself, what went wrong? What did I do wrong? Well, everybody does something wrong. There's always two sides of the story. It always takes two. But you do usually have a party that's more wrong than the other. And if you're sitting around blaming yourself, and feeling bad all the time, just remember it comes down to this one thing. At one point or another, there was unaligned values. Two people with very weak values could perhaps make it, and two people with very strong values, or just very alike values, could make it. But if they're unaligned, the chances are slim. And all you were living with was someone who either lied about their values or just were never aligned with you to begin with. And it was important for you to have done that. Understand that people do what they do because that's who they are. People say, well, you didn't do this for me anymore, or you don't talk to me like this anymore. They'll make up all sorts of reasons as to why they cheated, why they left you, why they divorced you. But in the end, they did what they did because that's who they are. There's a lot of people out there with a story similar to yours that still made it, but they made it because that's where their values were at. Guys, I've let this video drag on too long, and the only reason I made this video is not so much just for everybody to hear. I made it for me, and I made it for my kids, because someday I may need to rewatch this to understand what I'm really dealing with. I hope you understand this video. I hope you got something out of it. Like it and subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.